Yes. Faced with the inner disciple of the seven-star sword sect who stood before him, Duan Ling Tian nodded. No wonder. Senior brother Hu Li is usually in the Tianji Hall. He is currently the acting peak master of our seven-star sword sects, Tianji Peak. The inner disciple said. Tianji Peak, acting peak master? Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but be stunned. This was something he had never expected. To be able to become the acting peak master of Tianji Peak, Hu Li's current strength must be at least at or above the void prying stage, right? Duan Ling Tian was secretly shocked, finding it somewhat unbelievable. He knew Hu Li's talent. Although it was good, it would still be quite difficult for him to break through to the void prying stage in these past years. Perhaps, Hu Li has also experienced some fortuitous encounters over the years. Duan Ling Tian thought to himself. Filled with curiosity, Duan Ling Tian arrived near the Tianji Hall. He could vaguely see many inner disciples of the seven-star sword sect standing there, looking intently in the direction of the Tianji Hall from a distance. Whoosh. 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 As Duan Ling Tian approached Tianji Peak, he could faintly hear a series of piercing wind roars, indicating a swift figure constantly changing his movements. Senior brother Hu Li is truly amazing. Nonsense. If he wasn't amazing, how could he be the acting peak master of our seven-star sword sect's Tianji Peak? I heard that senior brother Hu Li's leg was crippled right here in our seven-star sword sect. There's such a thing? Yes, back then, when senior brother Hu Li had one of his legs crippled in our seven-star sword sect, it was senior brother Duan Ling Tian who personally avenged him. I heard about this from some senior brothers and sisters. What? Senior brother Duan Ling Tian? Is that the legendary figure in our seven-star sword sect? Someone who is not yet 30 years old, yet is already the strongest existence in our seven-star sword sect. A group of inner disciples of the seven-star sword sect, standing near the Tianji Hall, were discussing animatedly. Their discussion topic, which initially started with Hu Li, eventually shifted to Duan Ling Tian, with their words filled with admiration for Duan Ling Tian. If they knew that the legendary figure they were discussing was not far from them, they would not know what to think. Duan Ling Tian naturally paid no attention to the discussions of these inner disciples of the seven-star sword sect. His gaze fell upon the swift figure outside the Tianji Hall. This figure gave him a familiar feeling, as if he had seen him before. A young man in his early 30s, with a determined face. Although many years had passed, Duan Ling Tian could still make out a familiar outline in his appearance. With just one glance, he recognized this young man. Hu Li. Although Hu Li had one leg crippled, he moved swiftly with his remaining leg, his speed not at all slower than a healthy person, even surpassing them. Suddenly, in Duan Ling Tian's vision, Hu Li abruptly accelerated, as if transforming into a bolt of lightning. Whoosh. Hu Li tilted and fell, his only remaining leg giving way. Just as he was about to fall to the ground, he moved. Bang! Bang! Hu Li thrust his arms out, imbued with surging yuan force and wisps of green astral qi, striking the ground heavily and producing two piercing thuds. The next moment, Hu Li propelled himself forward with the force, like an arrow released from a bow, shooting directly towards a mountain wall to one side. Boom! A loud bang came, as Hu Li's only leg shot out like a cannonball, imbued with yuan force entwined with purple astral qi, striking the mountain wall fiercely. Immediately, a dense network of cracks appeared, centered on where he landed, spreading in all directions, as if forming a giant spiderweb. Above the void, the turbulent heaven and earth energy finally converged into a heaven and earth phenomenon. 10 ancient horned dragon phantoms appeared, winding down, lifelike. 4th level of the void prying stage, 4th level low-grade wind concept. Seeing this, Duan Ling Tian was greatly surprised. Although, on the way here, he had speculated that Hu Li's cultivation might very likely have broken through to the void prying stage. But when he truly witnessed Hu Li's cultivation, he still couldn't help but be surprised. Whoosh! Soon, Hu Li returned outside the Tianji Hall. Although his slightly robust body was supported by only one leg, he appeared as steady as a mountain. Duan Ling Tian raised an eyebrow and walked towards Hu Li. Immediately, the surrounding group of seven-star sword sect inner disciples were dumbfounded, staring blankly at Duan Ling Tian's retreating back. What is this guy trying to do? Doesn't this guy know that senior brother Hu Li usually hates being disturbed when he's cultivating? Many inner disciples of the seven-star sword sect exchanged glances, only thinking that Duan Ling Tian was just a hothead who wanted to ask Hu Li for guidance. A hint of amusement appeared on their faces in unison, as if they had already seen the scene of the other party being reprimanded by Hu Li. However, the amusement on their faces quickly disappeared, replaced by disbelief. They clearly saw it. Hu Li, in the distance, actually looked excited when he saw this inner disciple. Soon, Hu Li nodded for no apparent reason, glanced in their direction, and then walked into the Tianji Hall with that inner disciple disappearing from their sight. Who was that person? I don't know. Is there such a person among the inner disciples of our seven-star sword sect? Senior brother Hu Li seemed very excited to see him. Could he be some relative of senior brother Hu Li? Possibly. A group of inner disciples of the seven-star sword sect couldn't help but speculate. Inside the Tianji Hall, two figures had just entered. Haha, Duan Ling Tian, long time no see. Hu Li gave Duan Ling Tian a bear hug directly, his face filled with excitement. Duan Ling Tian returned Hu Li's bear hug, a brilliant smile on his face. Yes, it's been many years since we last met. Although we haven't seen each other for many years, your reputation has already spread throughout the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. No, it should be said that it has spread throughout the entire Dahan dynasty instead. Hu Li said with a smile. Apparently, he knew about Duan Ling Tian winning first place in the Dahan dynasty's dynasty martial competition and becoming the top young talent of the Dahan dynasty in this generation. You're quite well informed, you old rascal. Duan Ling Tian shook his head and smiled. I originally thought that by cultivating diligently at home all these years, I would be able to catch up to you. In the end, I found that I couldn't compare to you at all. Every single thing you do can be said to be earth-shattering. Hu Li sighed. In the past, he had always regarded Duan Ling Tian as his goal, and thus cultivated assiduously, which led to his current achievements. But who would have thought that just when he thought he could catch up to Duan Ling Tian, astonishing news after astonishing news reached Kongming City, reached the Hu clan, and reached his ears. Duan Ling Tian, with his own strength, suppressed the high-ranking officials of the three sects of the Azure Forest and avenged the seven-star sword sect. Afterward, he even helped the seven-star sword sect's new sect master, MOU, rebuild the seven-star sword sect. Back then, when I heard the news of the seven-star sword sect being annihilated, I made many inquiries about your whereabouts, but found nothing. I never expected that you would give me such a huge surprise silently. Hu Li exclaimed. After I learned that you destroyed the three sects of the Azure Forest and rebuilt the seven-star sword sect, I returned to the sect, hoping to do something within my capabilities for the sect. It's just a pity that when I returned, you had already left. As he spoke, Hu Li let out a hearty laugh. However, it's not too late for you to come back now. Today, I'm definitely going to get drunk with you. No rush for that. Duan Ling Tian shook his head, then said, I came back to the seven-star sword sect this time mainly to find you. As Duan Ling Tian spoke, he looked at Hu Li's severed leg. To find me. Hu Li was startled. How did you know I was here? Did you go to Kongming City? That's right. Duan Ling Tian nodded. I went to your Hu clan, and only then did I learn that you had returned to the seven-star sword sect. So I rushed over directly. This time, I only came to find you, and didn't intend to alarm anyone else. No wonder you didn't let me call out your name in public earlier. Hu Li suddenly understood. Hu Li, take this. Duan Ling Tian raised his hand, and a green glowing herb appeared in his palm. He casually plucked a leaf and handed it to Hu Li. What is this? Hu Li had never seen a glowing green herb before, and he couldn't help but widen his eyes in surprise. Although he couldn't recognize what it was, his intuition told him that it was no ordinary item. This is an herb that can make your severed leg regrow, Duan Ling Tian said with a smile. Duan Ling Tian spoke casually, but his words, falling into Hu Li's ears, were like a clap of thunder, so shocking they were unbelievable. This leaf can make my leg grow back. Hu Li's face was filled with shock. Although he didn't doubt Duan Ling Tian's words, he still found it somewhat incredible. Try it. First, remove the scar on the missing part of your leg. Then consume this immortal spirit grass, and you'll know that what I said is true. Duan Ling Tian naturally saw Hu Li's disbelieving expression and continued to speak. Hu Li took a deep breath, suppressing his inexplicably excited emotions. With a raised hand, the Yuan force entwined with green astral qi transformed into a blade, and he decisively cut off the scarred area of his severed leg. Humph! As blood spurted out, Hu Li, sweating on his forehead, let out a painful grunt. He then shoved the green glowing leaf in his hand into his mouth, chewed a few times, and swallowed it. A moment later, wisps of green light inexplicably emerged from Hu Li's body. The green light coiled around his body, as if it had come to life. Immediately after, the green light on his body began to converge towards his severed leg, completely gathering at the wound of his severed leg. How does it feel? Seeing this, Duan Ling Tian asked. A little itchy. As the green light gathered at the wound of his severed leg, Hu Li felt the pain gradually disappear, but he felt waves of numbness and itchiness coming from the wound on his leg. It was as if tens of thousands of ants were crawling there, making him almost unable to bear it. Although Duan Lingtian knew about the heaven-defying medicinal effects of the immortal spirit grass, he only knew about it through the memories of the reincarnation Martial Emperor. Even the reincarnation Martial Emperor had never seen the true immortal spirit grass, let alone witnessed its heaven-defying medicinal effects. What he knew was limited only to legends. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Suddenly, a series of crisp, light sounds entered Duan Lingtian's ears, capturing his attention. At the same time, Duan Lingtian was horrified to discover that at the wound where Hu Li's leg was severed, where the green light gathered, bones, flesh, and skin rapidly grew out. The bones, flesh, and skin that appeared out of thin air, under the shroud of the green light, were perfectly integrated with Hu Li's body, without any difference. Hu Li was stunned, completely stunned. Heavens! His leg was actually growing. His leg wasn't some sapling or seedling. It was the living flesh, bone, and skin of a person, yet it was rapidly growing right before his eyes. First, the thigh grew out. Then came the knee. Following the knee was the calf. After the calf had fully grown, the wisp of green light dimmed slightly, and the speed at which the foot grew slowed down. This scene made Hu Li unable to help but hold his breath. He was truly worried that the green light would disappear. Now he vaguely realized that the green light gathered at his severed leg was precisely the medicinal power of the immortal spirit grass. Once it vanished, the growth of his severed leg would stop. It's too miraculous. In just half an hour, Duan Lingtian personally witnessed a miracle, the miracle of rebirth of a broken leg. Watching Hu Li's foot grow out, Duan Lingtian's breathing couldn't help but quicken. According to the memories of the reincarnation Martial Emperor, even the Emperor-grade resurrection pill he refined during his peak strength, although reputed to revive the dead and regrow flesh on skeletons, still had limitations. First, reviving the dead targets those who are only seemingly dead, meaning those whose vitality has not completely vanished. It is impossible for the Emperor-grade resurrection pill to save someone who has completely lost all vitality. Second, regrowing flesh on skeletons targets those who have lost a piece of flesh or skin due to injury in a certain part of their body. But for a severed leg like Hu Li's, it would be difficult to help it rebirth. Although the Emperor-grade resurrection pill was the most top-tier medicinal pill for healing in the memories of the reincarnation Martial Emperor on the Yunxiao continent, it did not have the medicinal effect of allowing severed bones to undergo rebirth. However, the immortal spirit pill could allow severed bones to undergo rebirth. At this moment, Duan Lingtian personally witnessed all of this. Even the reincarnation Martial Emperor, having lived through 2 lifetimes, had many regrets. Not having seen the legendary immortal spirit grass was one of his regrets. Not having witnessed the medicinal effects of the legendary immortal spirit grass was an even greater regret. Duan Lingtian's heart stirred. Having undergone fusion with the reincarnation Martial Emperor's memories, he knew the regrets left behind by the reincarnation Martial Emperor during his 2 lifetimes like the back of his hand. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Wherever the green light passed, severed bones underwent rebirth, and flesh and skin appeared. In a short while, Hu Li's foot had completely grown out. At the same time, the crisp sound abruptly stopped, and the green light subsequently vanished. Hu Li's newly grown leg was perfectly symmetrical with his other leg, without any sense of disharmony. Of course, the only drawback was that Hu Li's newly grown leg was extremely white. Rather than just white, it was delicate. The outer skin was fair and smooth like a baby's, seemingly fragile enough to be broken with a flick of a finger. Haha, Hu Li, judging purely by the skin, your leg is even fairer and smoother than those little girls' legs. Duan Lingtian laughed heartily, teasing him. Hu Li's face turned red upon hearing this, but his eyes were filled with excitement. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Hu Li pushed off the ground with both legs, and his entire body quickly flew across the great hall of Tianji Hall, sometimes darting left, sometimes right, with the speed of lightning. After a round of testing, Hu Li discovered, compared to the leg he usually exercised, his newly grown leg was superior in both strength and explosive power. Ha ha ha! I, Hu Li, am not crippled anymore. I, Hu Li, am not crippled anymore. After suddenly stopping, Hu Li burst into hearty laughter. As he laughed, his eyes were filled with shining tears. He was crying tears of joy. Over the years, although he had lived strongly and set extremely harsh goals for himself in order to surpass Duan Lingtian, on the surface, he didn't seem to care much about losing a leg. But deep down, how could he not care? If he had a choice, who would willingly be a disabled person missing a leg? The frustration accumulated over many years had reached its peak in Hu Li's chest. Now that it was vented, it became unstoppable, and it took a long time for him to calm down. Seeing Hu Li's severed leg undergo rebirth, Duan Lingtian smiled, happy for Hu Li. Finally, after laughing for a while, Hu Li managed to suppress the excitement in his heart. Duan Lingtian, thank you. At the same time, he immediately looked at Duan Lingtian, thanking him with a serious expression and a tone full of sincerity. If not for Duan Lingtian, he would have been disabled for the rest of his life. But now, Duan Lingtian had allowed him to become a normal person again, making him feel excited from the bottom of his heart. From now on, he would no longer have to face strange looks from others. He, Hu Li, had stood up with dignity. Between you and me, there is no need for thanks. Duan Lingtian shook his head, then seemed to recall something and couldn't help but sigh. It's a pity about Sherlan. Although the immortal spirit grass in my hand is miraculous, it cannot save Sherlan's life. Back then, it was all my fault for cooperating with Sherlan to plead with you on behalf of Xiao Fei. Otherwise, Sherlan wouldn't have died. Hearing Duan Lingtian's words, a beautiful figure appeared in Hu Li's mind. Unknowingly, tears welled up in his eyes, and he felt vaguely agitated. If he had supported Duan Lingtian in killing Xiao Fei back then, perhaps the subsequent events wouldn't have happened, Sherlan wouldn't have died, and his leg wouldn't have been crippled. Over the years, every time he saw his severed leg, he had only one thought. This was his own fault. It's all in the past, you don't need to blame yourself. Besides, who could have known that Xiao Fei would be so ungrateful as to harm the two of you, his saviors? Duan Lingtian comforted him. Hu Li nodded, and after a while longer, his emotions gradually stabilized. Duan Lingtian, are you really not going to see the sect master? The sect master talks about you quite often. After Hu Li's emotions calmed down, he couldn't help but ask Duan Lingtian. The sect master he spoke of was the contemporary sect master of the Seven-Star Sword Sect, MOU. The former outer sect disciple who served as a groom and held a low position in the Seven-Star Sword Sect had, without realizing it, soared up and become the new sect master of the Seven-Star Sword Sect. No need. If I have time later, I will come back again. Duan Lingtian shook his head. After saying goodbye to Hu Li, he left Tianji Hall, arriving quickly and departing quickly. Hu Li, who had followed Duan Lingtian out of Tianji Hall, watched Duan Lingtian's figure vanish into thin air right before his eyes, and he couldn't help but be greatly astonished. Just how strong is Duan Lingtian's current power? Hu Li gasped, his eyes filled with shock. In this life, for me, Hu Li, to have known a prodigy martial artist like Duan Lingtian, my life has not been lived in vain. Unknowingly, the shock in Hu Li's eyes faded, replaced by a sparkling brilliance. A faint smile subtly appeared on his face. After leaving Tianji Hall, Duan Lingtian was not in a hurry to find Feng Tianwu. Since I'm already here, I should go find Peak Master Qin Xiang and ask her which outer domain force Kur and Little Feier are currently in. Two beautiful figures appeared in Duan Lingtian's mind, precisely his two fiancées, Kur and Li Fei. Back then, Kur and Li Fei followed Qin Xiang to the outer domain force, where Qin Xiang's sister was located, to wish her sister a happy birthday. Since that time, Kur and Li Fei have remained in that outer domain force and have not returned yet. It was naturally impossible to say that he didn't miss those two little girls. Peak Master Qin Xiang. Duan Lingtian didn't hesitate at all and went straight to Yaowang Hall, where he found Qin Xiang. Qin Xiang happened to be sitting in front of the pavilion in Yaowang Hall, drinking tea. She couldn't help but be startled when she saw the uninvited guest, but only sighed in relief after clearly seeing the person's face. However, her eyes were clearly filled with astonishment. It seems that your strength has improved significantly during this trip to the outer domain to participate in the 10 Dynasties Martial Assembly. Qin Xiang looked seriously at Duan Lingtian and sighed with emotion. Duan Lingtian nodded, then got straight to the point and said, Peak Master Qin Xiang, I know what you want to ask. Qin Xiang said directly. You want to ask me, which outer domain force Kur and Li Fei are in, right? Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. I'm not afraid you'll laugh at me for saying this. Although I have been to the outer domain force, where my sister is, I don't actually know what specific force it is. Qin Xiang smiled bitterly. Duan Lingtian truly never expected Qin Xiang to answer him like this. He found it even more incredible. Didn't Qin Xiang go to that outer domain force? How could she not even know what specific force that outer domain force was? I truly don't know what specific force it is. The only thing I know is that the force is situated on a snow peak, and the female disciples on the snow peak are mostly dressed in white. Qin Xiang said, A female sect? Duan Lingtian raised an eyebrow and asked curiously. Not entirely. That force, besides that snow peak, also has a towering volcano. When I went to wish my sister a happy birthday, people also came from that volcano. They were a group of male martial artists wearing fiery red robes. The volcano and the snow peak seemed to belong to the same force. Qin Xiang added, Snow peak? Volcano? Hearing this, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but frown, simultaneously searching through the memories of the reincarnation Martial Emperor, but ultimately finding nothing. In the memories of the reincarnation Martial Emperor, there was no recollection of such a sect. The reincarnation Martial Emperor's second life was 10,000 years ago. To have a sect that has been passed down for 10,000 years, according to the reincarnation Martial Emperor's memories, there seemed to be only two ancient clans on Cloud Continent. As Duan Lingtian searched through the reincarnation Martial Emperor's 2 lifetimes of memories, he couldn't help but think to himself. In the reincarnation Martial Emperor's memories, his first life and second life were also separated by 10,000 years. 10,000 years, and the world had changed dramatically. In his second life, among the numerous Cloud Continent forces that had been passed down from his first life, 10,000 years ago, only 2 ancient clans remained. Other forces he knew of in his first life had almost all become dust in the annals of history by his second life, no longer existing. Even if they still existed, they had completely declined and were barely clinging to life. So, the force Kur and Little Feier belonged to must be a force that appeared after the reincarnation Martial Emperor reincarnated through the 3 lives reincarnation art in his second life. Duan Lingtian was now 100% certain of this. Although Qin Xiang didn't know the specific name of the outer realm force that Kur and Li Fei belonged to, Duan Ling Tian still learned an important clue from her. Snow peaks, volcanoes. An outer realm force with both existing simultaneously should be rare. In the future, when I go to the outer realm again, I can use this clue to inquire about it. As long as that force isn't a low tier one, I should be able to find out. Duan Ling Tian thought to himself, thinking that he would soon have the opportunity to reunite with his fiancée Kerr and little Feier. A brilliant smile couldn't help but appear on Duan Ling Tian's face. After greeting Qin Xiang, Duan Ling Tian left Yawang Palace in a hurry to meet up with Feng Tianwu. After meeting Feng Tianwu, he still had to find Xiong Quan to help him repair his dantian. Just as Duan Ling Tian and Feng Tianwu met, in the eastern region of the northern desert in the outer realm, within the five-element sect stronghold, several uninvited guests arrived today. Five-element sect, hand over Duan Ling Tian. A loud voice, like a clap of thunder, dispersed the clouds in the sky and clearly echoed throughout the five-element sect's five peaks. Immediately, the high-ranking officials and disciples within the five-element sect's five peaks were on high alert. Who is it? They want our five-element sect to hand over senior brother Ling Tian. The people who came must be from the second-rate force, Chuyin sect. Senior brother Duan Ling Tian killed the two most outstanding young people of the Chuyin sect, so it's no surprise that the Chuyin sect couldn't hold back and came to cause trouble for our five-element sect. Soon, many high-ranking officials and disciples of the five-element sect guessed the identity of the visitors. Facts proved them right. Swish, swish, swish. Soon, from within the five-element sect's five peaks, figures soared into the sky, led by three high-ranking officials of the five-element sect. They instantly arrived in the sky and confronted the visitors. There were 4 visitors in total. Leading them was a burly old man, whose brows conveyed an aura of authority without him even getting angry. He just stood there silently, and the profound aura that seemed to merge with heaven and earth made the faces of the five-element sect's high-ranking officials solemn. They felt an invisible pressure emanating from the old man, enveloping them, making it difficult for them to breathe. Martial Emperor expert. At this moment, the high-ranking officials of the five-element sect looked at the burly old man, and their hearts trembled for no reason, as this thought simultaneously popped into their minds. In their opinion, unless it was an expert above the Martial Emperor realm, even a Void Realm Peak expert who had comprehended 3 or even 4 layers of 9th-level Void Transformation profundity could not give them such a feeling. Tongshan. They immediately guessed the identity of the burly old man, Tongshan, the only Martial Emperor expert of the Chuyin sect. As high-ranking officials of the third-rate force, five-element sect in the northern desert, they had some understanding of the 3 major second-rate forces in the northern desert, which included the Chuyin sect and its Martial Emperor expert. Among the high-ranking officials of the five-element sect, the 3 leaders were the Fire Peak Master, Cha Bai, the Water Peak Master, Yu Fong, and the Earth Peak Master, Tiangu. Is Your Excellency Senior Tongshan of the Chuyin sect? Tiangu looked at the burly old man and politely bowed as he asked, You're not bad for recognizing my identity. However, you shouldn't be the sect master of the five-element sect, right? Tongshan glanced at Tiangu indifferently and asked, Junior is Tiangu, the Earth Peak Master of the five-element sect. Tiangu replied with a smile. In your five-element sect, besides your sect master, no one else is qualified to speak with me. Let your five-element sect master come out and hand over Duan Ling Tian. Otherwise, today I will leave no one alive in your five-element sect. Tongshan snorted coldly, and by the end of his words, his tone was full of coldness and impoliteness. Since you recognize me, you should naturally know my strength and know that I have this strength. Senior indeed has this strength. Facing Tongshan's threat, Tiangu nodded seriously, but there was no trace of fear on his face, looking as if he had something to rely on. Since you know my strength, why aren't you hurrying to call out your five-element sect master? Hearing Tiangu's words, Tongshan thought he had compromised and said with disdain, Senior Tongshan, I'm truly sorry. Neither our sect master nor our Wood Peak master are currently in the five-element sect. Tiangu spoke unhurriedly, his words clear and firm. Then hand over Duan Ling Tian. Tong Shan's eyes shot out killing intent, and when he mentioned Duan Ling Tian, the aura of a martial emperor expert once again swept out from him, causing the faces of the five-element sect's high-ranking officials to change. I'll give you 30 breaths of time. If you don't hand over Duan Ling Tian after 30 breaths, the five-element sect will cease to exist. Tong Shan spoke calmly, but his words were filled with a strong killing intent. At the same time, his eyes were full of malice and violence, as if they were choosing people to devour. Senior Tong Shan, perhaps you don't know yet? As early as in the Martial Emperor's secret treasury, Duan Ling Tian had already announced his departure from our five-element sect and is no longer a disciple of our five-element sect. Under such circumstances, you still want to target our five-element sect. Aren't you afraid that your Chuyun sect will become the laughingstock of the northern desert? Tiangu said indifferently, and by the end of his words, his tone carried a hint of mockery and teasing. You don't need to worry about that. Still, the same goes. Either hand over Duan Ling Tian, or the five-element sect will be destroyed. Tong Shan's voice became noticeably colder by the end. Senior Tong Shan, I've already said that Duan Ling Tian has left our five-element sect and is no longer a five-element sect disciple. Even we don't know where he went. Tiangu added. Do you think I'll believe that? Tong Shan sneered. Whether Senior Tong Shan believes it or not, that's the truth. Furthermore, the reason our five-element sect master and Wood Peak master are not in the sect is because they are busy cultivating and breaking through. But before they left, they had already stated that if anyone from your Chuyun sect dares to harm a single hair on any of our five-element sect members while they are away, once they break through to the Martial Emperor realm, they will definitely visit the Chuyun sect to pay their respects. Tiangu grinned and said unhurriedly, Threat. It was a naked threat. Now, Tiangu was threatening Tong Shan, causing Tong Shan's face to completely darken. Martial Emperor realm. It had to be said that Tiangu's words had a certain deterrent effect. Not only the people Tong Shan brought with him, but even Tong Shan himself, after hearing Tiangu's threat, couldn't help but change his expression. Martial Emperor realm? Do you think the Martial Emperor realm is that easy to break through? After hearing Tiangu's words, Tong Shan couldn't help but sneer. Among those present, only he had the most say on this, because he himself was an expert who had broken through to the Martial Emperor realm. Our sect master himself has comprehended 9th-level high-grade wind profundity and 9th-level high-grade thunder profundity. With the fragment of wind profundity and fragment of thunder profundity, breaking through to the Martial Emperor realm is not difficult. Facing Tong Shan's sneer, Tiangu dismissed it with disdain. As for our Wood Peak master, he has comprehended 9th-level high-grade water profundity and 9th-level high-grade fire profundity. Comprehending two completely opposing 9th-level void transformation profundities, it's only a matter of time before he breaks through to the Martial Emperor realm. It had to be said that Tiangu's two statements finally made Tong Shan's expression change. Even the three people who followed Tong Shan were now all changing their expressions. The five-element sect had obtained 2 profundity fragments. Moreover, it seemed that both were taken by the five-element sect master for cultivation, clearly preparing to hide elsewhere to comprehend profundity and thus break through to the Martial Emperor realm in one fell swoop. Not only that, the five-element sect's Wood Peak master had actually comprehended both water and fire 9th-level void transformation profundities. For such a void realm peak expert, breaking through to the Martial Emperor realm and becoming a Martial Emperor expert was effortless, just a matter of time. In other words, the five-element sect would gain 2 more Martial Emperor experts in the near future. At that time, even if the 2 opponents were not his match, killing other members of the Chuyun sect would be as simple as cutting grass for them. Tong Shan's face alternated between green and pale. Only other Martial Emperor experts could make him, a Martial Emperor expert, show such an expression. Let's go. Tong Shan called out to the 3 people behind him and turned to leave. It had to be said that after learning the trump card of the five-element sect, Tongshan truly dared not do anything more to the Five-Element sect. Unless he could find the Five-Element sect master and the Wood Peak master and kill them before they broke through to the Martial Emperor realm to eliminate future troubles. Otherwise, he dared not take the risk. Senior Tongshan, I know where Duan Ling Tian is. As Tongshan was about to leave, a low voice, a Yuan force condensed sound, reached his ears. Tongshan raised an eyebrow and turned his head, his gaze sweeping over the high-ranking members of the Five-Element sect, as if trying to find out who had just used their elemental energy to send him a reminder. Seeing Tongshan's sharp gaze, the faces of the Five-Element sect's high-ranking members, including Tian Gu and Yu Fong, became serious. Only Cha Bai, the Peak Master of Fire Peak, remained calm, his eyes filled with a cold glint. Senior Tongshan, after that Duan Ling Tian left the Martial Emperor's treasure, he never returned to our Five-Element sect. He should have returned to his hometown, the Han Dynasty. It was Cha Bai who had just sent the elemental energy message into Tongshan's ear. Now, Cha Bai continued to speak to Tongshan via elemental energy message. As for the location of the Han Dynasty, Senior can go to the Blade and Sword sect in the region south of the Northern Desert and ask. I believe the Blade and Sword sect will give Senior a satisfactory answer. Cha Bai finished in one breath. Tongshan subtly gave Cha Bai a deep look. You are very good. If Duan Ling Tian is ever brought to justice, I, Tongshan, will owe you a favor. Cha Bai's eyes lit up upon hearing this. A Martial Emperor expert promising him a favor? For a moment, his heart was filled with excitement and joy. The resentment he felt towards Duan Ling Tian due to the death of his direct disciple seemed to be completely forgotten at this moment. If he hadn't been worried about other high-ranking members of the Five-Element sect noticing something, he would have already let out an excited cheer. Thank you, Senior. Cha Bai secretly took a deep breath, trying his best to maintain a calm expression, and thanked Tongshan via elemental energy message. Tongshan once again cast a cold glance at the high-ranking members of the Five-Element sect, then left with the other three, disappearing from the sight of the Five-Element sect's high-ranking members. Phew. 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 Seeing Tongshan and his group leave, the high-ranking members of the Five-Element sect, whose spirits had been tense, relaxed, and all couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. As expected of a Martial Emperor expert, the aura he inadvertently revealed was so overwhelming that I couldn't even breathe. Tian Gu sighed. Yes, Martial Emperor experts are too powerful. Yu Fong agreed deeply, then muttered to herself with an expectant look. I wonder if I will have the chance to break through to the Martial Emperor realm in my lifetime. When the Sect Master and Peak Master Chiyu return, our Five-Element sect will have 2 Martial Emperor experts. At that time, our Five-Element sect will be able to become the 4th second-rate force in the Northern Desert in one fell swoop. Someone said something, causing the eyes of the high-ranking members of the Five-Element sect, except for Cha Bai, to light up, filled with anticipation. Duan Ling Tian, this time, you are dead for sure. Cha Bai's eyes glinted with cold light. At some point, a sinister smile had appeared on the corner of his mouth, as if he had already seen the scene of Duan Ling Tian being killed by Tongshan, the Martial Emperor expert from the Cloud Exiting sect. Duan Ling Tian naturally didn't know what was happening in the Five-Element sect. He also didn't know that Tongshan, guided by Cha Bai, had already set off for the Blade and Sword sect in the region south of the Northern Desert to inquire about the whereabouts of the Han Dynasty. Currently, Duan Ling Tian had just left the 7-Star Sword sect and rendezvoused with a fiery red figure hidden above the 7-Star Sword sect. Brother Duan, have you found the person? The owner of the fiery red figure was a graceful woman in red with a captivating beauty that could topple nations. Every gesture and smile seemed to enchant all who beheld her. Duan Ling Tian nodded. He was still thinking about the extraterrestrial force where his 2 fiancées were located. Snow Peak, volcano. These were the only clues he currently possessed. Tian Wu, let's go. We're going to find Xiongquan. Coming back to his senses, Duan Ling Tian called out to the woman and was the first to fly out. Feng Tian Wu's figure, like a spirit of fire, followed closely behind, like a shadow. Duan Ling Tian moved like a flash of lightning, but before he could accelerate, he couldn't help but frown, looking towards the high sky beyond the distant clouds, as if he had sensed something. There's someone over there. Soon, Feng Tianwu also heard a rapid whooshing sound as someone flew through the air, their target directly behind them, heading for the seven-star sword sect. Whoosh! Soon, the clouds ahead parted, and a lightning-fast figure appeared before Duan Ling Tian and Feng Tianwu. The lightning-fast figure stopped abruptly not far in front of Duan Ling Tian and Feng Tianwu. When this person's gaze fell on Duan Ling Tian, his pair of blood-red eyes flashed, and then he covered his head with both hands, letting out a painful scream. How is this possible? When the figure in front of him stopped, Duan Ling Tian also stopped, looking at the figure covered in wisps of black mist, his face full of disbelief. He never thought he would see this person here. Brother Duan, do you know him? At this moment, Feng Tianwu, who had stopped with Duan Ling Tian, happened to see the shock and disbelief on Duan Ling Tian's face and couldn't help but ask curiously. However, Duan Ling Tian didn't answer her, his gaze fixed on the figure shrouded in black mist, an elderly man with blood-red eyes. At this moment, Duan Ling Tian's breathing couldn't help but become rapid. The scene before him gave him too great a shock. Shouldn't he be left to fend for himself in that inscription array? Didn't I cripple his dantian? And his four limbs, shouldn't they also have been crippled by me? A series of questions arose in Duan Ling Tian's mind. The person who appeared before him was none other than Zhao Ming. Zhao Ming, one of the two Dharma protector elders of the seven-star sword sect in the past, known as Elder Ming. Back then, when the seven-star sword sect was destroyed, he betrayed the seven-star sword sect and defected to the three green forest sects, becoming a protector elder of the three green forest sects. Later, he repeatedly tried to kill Duan Ling Tian, but was instead tricked by Duan Ling Tian into an inscription array in the Blackstone Empire, where he was trapped. After the dynasty martial competition ended, Duan Ling Tian's strength greatly increased, far surpassing Zhao Ming. He re-entered that inscription array, and after killing another elder from the three green forest sects, he crippled Zhao Ming's dantian and his four limbs. At that time, when he left that inscription array, he thought Zhao Ming would spend the rest of his life in the terror of living a life worse than death. But he never expected to encounter Zhao Ming here today. Moreover, the current Zhao Ming seemed completely different from before. He gave him an extremely dangerous feeling. This Zhao Ming, shouldn't he be a cripple? How could he appear here? And he seems to have gained powerful strength. Duan Ling Tian's face was somewhat grim, and his spiritual energy extended out, intending to probe Zhao Ming's cultivation. However, he quickly discovered that when his spiritual energy approached the black mist emanating from Zhao Ming's body, it was as if it had sunk into a ball of cotton, completely disappearing, unable to detect Zhao Ming's cultivation at all. With my current spiritual energy, even a void transformation stage 9th level martial artist, I can still probe their cultivation. But with this Zhao Ming's cultivation, my spiritual energy is actually unable to probe it. Duan Ling Tian's face became even uglier. At the same time, he had an ominous premonition. Could he not be Zhao Ming, but someone who looks exactly like Zhao Ming? Soon, a hopeful thought suddenly popped into Duan Ling Tian's mind. However, this thought was mercilessly shattered by the old man standing not far in front of him just as it arose. Duan Ling Tian. I remember. You are Duan Ling Tian. You are Duan Ling Tian. The old man in the distance, his originally dim, blood-red eyes, suddenly gained a few glints of light, as if they had come alive, and then he stared at Duan Ling Tian, gnashing his teeth and roaring. It really is Zhao Ming. Seeing the ferocity and hatred on the old man's face, Duan Ling Tian's heart skipped a beat, and his face completely darkened. Ha ha ha! Duan Ling Tian, I finally found you. Today, not only will I kill you, but I will also destroy the seven-star sword sect that you rebuilt with your own hands. The current Zhao Ming had recovered his sanity from his initial confusion, looking at Duan Ling Tian and laughing wildly, his laughter filled with violence and hatred. Zhao Ming, I didn't expect you to still be alive. Duan Ling Tian's eyes flashed with cold light as he said in a deep voice. You naturally want me dead. Unfortunately, you couldn't kill me. The day you didn't kill me, today, I will kill you. On the road to the underworld, remember one thing. If you don't cut the grass by the roots, it will grow back with the spring breeze. Zhao Ming, with a ferocious face, actually started lecturing Duan Ling Tian as he spoke later on. The day I could cripple you, today I can still kill you. Duan Ling Tian said coldly. He was still very confident in his current strength. Although he couldn't see how strong Zhao Ming's current cultivation was, in his opinion, it shouldn't be possible for him to surpass him. After all, when Zhao Ming's dantian and limbs were crippled by him, he was only a void-prying stage martial artist. Now, only a little over a year has passed since he crippled Zhao Ming. In his opinion, in just over a year, even if Zhao Ming had some fortuitous encounter, it would be impossible for him to surpass him. Is that so? Hearing Duan Ling Tian's words, Zhao Ming laughed, his laughter filled with arrogance. Duan Ling Tian, today, I won't be in a hurry to kill you. I will make you taste the despair, just like you did to me last time. Amidst the loud laughter, the black mist around Zhao Ming's body churned, emitting waves of terrifying aura. Boom, 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 boom. Immediately after, as the black mist churned around Zhao Ming's body, the air currents were squeezed, creating bursts of thunderous air explosions that shook people's hearts. What powerful strength! Duan Ling Tian's expression changed, and Feng Tianwu, who stood beside him, also had a slight change in her pretty face. Whoosh! At the same time, above Zhao Ming's head in the void, the power of heaven and earth churned, finally converging into a heavenly phenomenon. Ancient horned dragon phantoms appeared before Duan Ling Tian and Feng Tianwu, their numbers continuously increasing. 100, 200, 300, 1,000, and still increasing. The power of 3,000 ancient horned dragons. When he saw 3,000 ancient horned dragon phantoms appear above Zhao Ming's head in the void, Duan Ling Tian's expression completely changed. Faced with the scene before him, Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but change his expression. Even now, with his quasi-emperor grade spirit sword, when he unleashed his full power, his strength was only comparable to that of 3,000 ancient horned dragons. And now, Zhao Ming hadn't even used a spirit weapon, yet he had already displayed such powerful strength. His strength is still increasing? Soon, Duan Ling Tian's pupils couldn't help but constrict. Heavens! What did he see? The number of ancient horned dragon phantoms in the natural phenomenon above Zhao Ming's head was still increasing. It seemed endless. 4,000, 5,000, 6,000. Eventually, Duan Ling Tian was stunned into numbness, gazing at the more than 7,000 ancient horned dragon phantoms that had stopped increasing, completely dumbfounded. Feng Tianwu, standing beside Duan Ling Tian, had her beautiful face completely changed. Martial Emperor powerhouse. In Feng Tianwu's opinion, only a powerhouse above the Martial Emperor realm could harness the power of heaven and earth to form such a natural phenomenon. Even a peak void-prying stage powerhouse who had comprehended 5 types of 9th-level void transformation concept would not be able to create such an exaggerated natural phenomenon without using a spirit weapon, even when exerting their full power. Those who could be called peak void-prying stage powerhouses were all 9th-level void-prying stage martial artists who had comprehended 2 or more types of 9th-level void transformation concept. A 9th-level void-prying stage martial artist, when fully unleashing their elemental energy, possessed strength comparable to 1,200 ancient horned dragons. A 9th-level void transformation concept was comparable to 1,000 ancient horned dragons. Thus, a peak void-prying stage powerhouse who had comprehended 5 types of 9th-level void transformation concept, when exerting their full power without a spirit weapon, possessed strength comparable to only 6,200 ancient horned dragons. Such strength was insignificant compared to the old man in front of them. What exactly did this Zhao Ming experience? How could he possess such powerful strength? After being shocked to the extreme, Duan Ling Tian completely sobered up, and his gaze towards Zhao Ming was filled with horror once more. He never expected Zhao Ming's current strength to be so formidable. After a year, the power Zhao Ming possessed was already comparable to a martial emperor powerhouse, far beyond what he could compare to now. Over 7,000 ancient horned dragons worth of strength. What kind of concept was that? Even if he used his quasi-emperor grade spirit sword and unleashed his full power, his strength would still be less than half of Zhao Ming's. Zhao Ming could kill him with a mere flick of his wrist. Duan Ling Tian, didn't you say that since you could cripple me back then, you could kill me today? I'd like to see how you kill me now. Duan Ling Tian's change in expression had been observed by Zhao Ming from beginning to end. Seeing Duan Ling Tian's current ugly expression, a ferocious and triumphant smile appeared on his face. Zhao Ming, it seems you've had quite an adventure. In just over a year, you've gained such formidable strength. Duan Ling Tian took a deep breath and said to Zhao Ming with a solemn expression. What? Scared? Zhao Ming laughed, a ferocious laugh. This feeling of having everything under his control made his blood boil. Scared? Just with you. Duan Ling Tian narrowed his eyes, a cold sneer forming at the corner of his mouth. You're still stubborn even when death is at your doorstep. Today, I will return everything you did to me last time, in full. However, after I cripple your dantian and limbs, I will personally watch you struggle for 3 days and 3 nights before killing you. Zhao Ming snorted coldly, his face covered in frost, and his eyes gleamed with maliciousness. If you don't cut the grass at the roots, it will grow back with the spring breeze. Duan Ling Tian not taking his life back then, allowing him to recover and gain this powerful strength, was undoubtedly a living example. Therefore, he would not repeat Duan Ling Tian's mistake. Although, even now, he still couldn't recall what he had experienced. In his memory, after Duan Ling Tian crippled his dantian and limbs and left, he fell unconscious. When he regained consciousness, he found himself in a mountain range, possessing strength comparable to over 7,000 ancient horned dragons. This new strength he possessed was several hundred times greater than his previous strength. My current strength is comparable to a martial emperor powerhouse. Although Zhao Ming was only from the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, he still had some understanding of martial emperor powerhouses. Because of this, he knew his current strength was enough to rival a martial emperor powerhouse. After crippling my dantian and limbs, watch me struggle for 3 days and 3 nights, and then kill me? It must be said that Zhao Ming's extremely malicious words sent a chill down Duan Ling Tian's spine. At this moment, just as Zhao Ming said, he regretted not eradicating the root of the problem back then. At that time, he hated Zhao Ming so much for betraying the 7-Star Sword sect and colluding with the people of the 3 Green Forest sects to kill the 7-Star Sword sect's Elder Xian and former sect leader, Linghu Jinhong. Therefore, he didn't kill Zhao Ming directly. He wanted Zhao Ming to live a life worse than death for the rest of his days, to quell the hatred in his heart. He never expected that after more than a year, Zhao Ming's crippled dantian and limbs would not only heal, but he would also gain such formidable power. Could it be that there was something I didn't discover inside that inscription formation in the Blackrock Empire? Now, Duan Ling Tian only thought that Zhao Ming's adventure was within that inscription formation. Otherwise, he couldn't imagine what kind of adventure Zhao Ming could have had. Given Zhao Ming's state at the time, his adventure couldn't have occurred outside that inscription formation, unless someone went inside to rescue him and gave him such an adventure. But to help him repair his dantian, one would either need immortal spirit grass or healing elixirs of the quasi-emperor grade resurrection pill level or higher. Duan Ling Tian felt that these were unrealistic. 10,000 years ago, although the reincarnation Martial Emperor did release some quasi-emperor grade resurrection pills and emperor grade resurrection pills, they all flowed into the hands of a few powerful forces on the Cloud Continent. After 10,000 years, they are probably long gone. Even if they weren't used up, they couldn't possibly appear in the Han Dynasty, let alone the Blackrock Empire. Duan Ling Tian thought to himself. Moreover, even if someone did rescue Zhao Ming, they couldn't possibly bestow upon him such terrifying power. In just over a year, Zhao Ming went from an initial void stage martial artist, with strength only comparable to a dozen ancient horned dragons, to a powerhouse possessing over 7,000 ancient horned dragons worth of strength, comparable to a martial emperor. Even a martial emperor might not have such means. It must be said that Zhao Ming's progress shocked Duan Ling Tian. No matter how he searched the reincarnation martial emperor's memories, he couldn't find any method that could allow a person to possess such immense power in such a short period of time. Moreover, Zhao Ming's power was very strange. The black power swirling around Zhao Ming's body seems to be neither elemental energy nor concept. What kind of power is that? Looking at Zhao Ming, Duan Ling Tian's brows furrowed tightly. Soon, a glint flashed in Duan Ling Tian's eyes. As if he remembered something, the power around Zhao Ming's body seems somewhat similar to the power that appeared on the demon's sealing tablet back then. Back then, before he was demonized by the demon's sealing tablet and single-handedly took down 6 elders of the Tsang Wolf Fort, a black power that was neither elemental energy nor concept had appeared on the demon's sealing tablet. That black power merged into his body, into his soul, causing him to lose consciousness while also granting him extremely powerful strength. At that time, he was only a void prying stage martial artist. But after being demonized by the demon's sealing tablet, he actually took down 6 Tsang Wolf Fort elders at the void prying stage level. Could it be that Zhao Ming was also demonized? Duan Ling Tian's pupils constricted again, guessing inwardly. It's just, if he was demonized, why didn't he lose his sanity? This point, Duan Ling Tian was completely puzzled by. Boom. Just then, a scorching aura rushed towards him, instantly changing Duan Ling Tian's expression. When he turned his head, he saw at a glance that a vast flame was rising from Feng Tianwu's body, soaring into the sky and emitting an overwhelming scorching aura. Whoosh! Above Feng Tianwu's head, in the void, first 1,000 ancient horned dragon phantoms appeared. Then they turned into 2,000 ancient horned dragon phantoms. Tianwu. Duan Ling Tian's face changed dramatically. He never expected that Feng Tianwu would suddenly communicate with and unleash the first-level Emperor Realm Fire concept. At this moment, he could clearly feel it. Within Tianwu's body, the power of the fire spirit body was on the verge of erupting, as if it was about to burst Feng Tianwu apart. Whoosh! After the 2,000 ancient horned dragon phantoms appeared, the natural phenomenon continued to change, and in a moment, another 1,000 ancient horned dragon phantoms appeared. 3,000 ancient horned dragons worth of strength. Second-level Emperor Realm Fire concept. Seeing this scene, Duan Ling Tian's expression changed again. At this moment, he could feel the power of Feng Tianwu's fire dragon body becoming even more restless. Without time to think, he hastily condensed his elemental energy into a sound that pierced Feng Tianwu's ear. Tianwu, quickly withdraw your fire concept. I have a way to deal with this, Zhao Ming. Really, I have a way. Duan Ling Tian's tone was filled with panic. In the past, he only knew that Feng Tianwu could unleash the first-level Emperor Realm Fire concept, and he didn't know that Feng Tianwu could also unleash the second-level Emperor Realm Fire concept. In fact, he felt that if Tianwu continued, she might even be able to unleash the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th levels of Emperor Realm Fire concept. But if Tianwu did that, it would almost certainly be a fatal situation. She might even burst from the power of the fire spirit body within her before she could even unleash a higher level of Emperor Realm Fire concept. Feng Tianwu, after witnessing the strength Zhao Ming displayed, and hearing the irreconcilable hatred between Zhao Ming and Duan Ling Tian from their conversation, had made up her mind. Even if it meant sacrificing her life, she would kill Zhao Ming and rescue her brother Duan from danger. For her brother Duan, she would spare no effort, including her life. Really, hearing Duan Ling Tian's elemental energy sound transmission, Feng Tianwu was somewhat unconvinced. She only thought Duan Ling Tian said that to comfort her. Really, Duan Ling Tian nodded quickly, without any hesitation. He knew, as long as he denied it, this foolish girl would definitely disregard her own life. further enhancing the fire elemental profundity she was using, and fight Zhao Ming to the death. Feng Tianwu looked at Duan Ling Tian seriously, seeing that he didn't seem to be lying to her, and the flames rising from her body gradually dissipated into the air. At the same time, Feng Tianwu's face turned pale. Wah! Immediately after, the power from her fire spirit body within her surged, shaking her internal organs, and a sweet taste in her throat caused her to spit out a mouthful of clotted blood. Foolish girl. Seeing this, Duan Ling Tian's heart inexplicably ached, and his eyes showed tenderness. Oomph. I thought you had some tricks, but I didn't expect that you would change color and vomit blood after only displaying the power of a mere 3,000 ancient horned dragons. Zhao Ming, who had been somewhat solemn when he saw Feng Tianwu drawing upon the power of heaven and earth to manifest a grand celestial phenomenon, couldn't help but snort coldly and sneer when he saw this scene. He could tell the reason Feng Tianwu could unleash such powerful force was likely due to a desperate, secret technique. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been injured by her own power. Since you are willing to fight to the death for this Duan Ling Tian, you must be in love with him. In that case, I will fulfill your wish today and let you both become a pair of doomed lovers. Zhao Ming spoke slowly, his words filled with chilling, killing intent. As soon as his voice fell, tendrils of black mist around his body surged violently, emitting a terrifying aura. Boom, 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 boom. The black mist surged, compressing the air and creating bursts of thunderous air explosions. At the same time, a black force appeared out of thin air in Zhao Ming's hand, completely solidified, emitting waves of terrifying aura, as if it could destroy everything. Immediately after, he looked at Feng Tianwu, his killing intent palpable. Duan Ling Tian's expression had already turned serious the moment Zhao Ming's voice fell. In his hand, a talisman appeared silently. It was one of the 3 talismans left to him by his cheap old man. Of the 3 talismans, one was used to kill Bai Nanxiang, the strongest expert of the Han Dynasty royal family, leaving 2. Bai Nanxiang was a void transformation stage first-level martial artist, and with the talisman, killing him was instantaneous. I wonder if this talisman can kill Zhao Ming. After all, Zhao Ming's current strength is comparable to a martial emperor. If the talisman is useless, I'll just have to demonize myself with the demon sealing tablet again. Duan Ling Tian secretly took a deep breath, having made up his mind. However, at this moment, he seemed to have forgotten one crucial point. Back then, the reason he was demonized by the demon sealing tablet was that the demon sealing tablet actively contacted him. If the demon sealing tablet didn't actively contact him, he would have no way to make it demonize him. In an instant, Duan Ling Tian's gaze was firmly fixed on Zhao Ming. Just as Zhao Ming's robes fluttered and he was about to make a move to kill Feng Tianwu, Duan Ling Tian suddenly let out a loud roar, startling Zhao Ming, whose body had just been about to move. Lin. Duan Ling Tian's roar startled Zhao Ming. The moment Zhao Ming reacted, he looked in Duan Ling Tian's direction and saw a light piece of paper floating towards him, emitting a terrifying power that made his heart palpitate. Stop! Almost at the same instant, Duan Ling Tian threw out the talisman in his hand and shouted Lin. A thunderous roar descended from the sky. Accompanying this roar, a ghostly figure appeared out of thin air beside Zhao Ming. Unfortunately, he was too late. By the time he appeared, a hideous blood hole had already appeared on Zhao Ming's forehead, from which a jet of blood spurted out, causing Zhao Ming's eyes to lose focus and his entire body to collapse. The moment he reacted, Zhao Ming didn't even have time to form any thoughts before he was killed, slain by the concentrated power shot from the talisman that had already turned into dust. Zhao Ming's corpse fell from the sky, disappearing from Duan Ling Tian's sight in an instant. That was Feng Tianwu's pretty face was filled with shock, her autumn eyes flickering with disbelief. The scene she had just witnessed was absolutely the most incredible she had ever seen in her life. She saw her brother Duan merely threw out a piece of paper covered in mysterious symbols and shouted Lin. The next moment, the paper strangely shattered, turning into scattered dust. At the same time, Zhao Ming, who could unleash the power of over 7,000 ancient horned dragons without a spirit weapon and whose strength was comparable to a martial emperor, suddenly had a blood hole appear on his forehead and was instantly killed. As for how Zhao Ming died, although she didn't see it clearly, she could sense it was related to that paper covered in mysterious symbols that had turned into scattered dust. What was that? Feng Tianwu's heart trembled, completely unaware of what the paper Duanling Tian had just thrown was, possessing such immense power. Soon, Feng Tianwu's attention shifted to the black figure that had appeared out of thin air. The thunderous roar earlier was emitted by this person. Phew! Seeing that the talisman left by his cheap old man instantly killed Zhao Ming, Duanling Tian, who had been somewhat anxious, breathed a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted. But soon, his face grew serious again. In his hand, another talisman appeared, and at the same time, he stared intently at the black-clad middle-aged man who had appeared out of thin air. Just now, when he threw the talisman at Zhao Ming and shouted Lin, the other party tried to stop him, descending from the sky, clearly with ill intentions. Furthermore, the other party might even know Zhao Ming. Coupled with the opponent's ghostly speed, he realized that the opponent's strength was no weaker than Zhao Ming's. Therefore, he hurriedly took out the last remaining talisman. Duanling Tian noticed that when another talisman appeared in his hand, the black-clad middle-aged man, who had originally been staring at him with cold eyes, suddenly tightened his expression. Seeing this, Duanling Tian couldn't help but breathe another sigh of relief. He could tell that this black-clad middle-aged man was very wary of the talisman in his hand. It made sense. The scene of him throwing the talisman and instantly killing Zhao Ming was witnessed by the other party. If the other party wasn't afraid of the talisman in his hand, that would be rather strange. Dao Talisman. You, a mortal realm martial cultivator from a backwater continent. Where did you get a Dao Talisman? The ordinary-looking black-clad middle-aged man looked at Duanling Tian and asked in a deep voice. Backwater continent. Mortal realm martial cultivator. Hearing the black-clad middle-aged man's words, Duanling Tian couldn't help but be stunned, and even Feng Tianwu, standing beside him, her face of unparalleled beauty, was filled with confusion. When did Cloud Continent become a backwater continent? From the black-clad middle-aged man's tone, it seemed he wasn't from Cloud Continent. Also, what was a mortal realm martial cultivator? You're not from Cloud Continent. Duanling Tian's eyes flashed, and he asked with a serious expression. Having integrated the memories of the reincarnation Martial Emperor, he knew that beyond Cloud Continent, in the depths of the sea, there was a group of powerful demons, and even demon emperors that the reincarnation Martial Emperor at his peak would find difficult to contend with. According to the reincarnation Martial Emperor's conjecture, in the depths of the sea, besides many powerful demon emperors, there might even exist some martial emperors of astonishing strength. Unfortunately, even with the reincarnation Martial Emperor's strength, which was considered Cloud Continent's #1 back then, he had to proceed with extreme caution in the depths of the sea, making it difficult to further explore its secrets. In the reincarnation Martial Emperor's memories, he also heard that many older generation Martial Emperor experts from Cloud Continent had once entered the depths of the sea to explore its secrets. But none of those older generation Martial Emperor experts ever returned after leaving. According to the conjectures of the people of Cloud Continent, those older generation Martial Emperor experts might have gotten lost in the depths of the sea and couldn't find their way back. And according to the reincarnation Martial Emperor's conjecture, those older generation Martial Emperor experts either died at the hands of those powerful demon emperors in the depths of the sea, or they settled down in the depths of the sea, or even overseas. According to the reincarnation Martial Emperor's conjecture, in this world, besides Cloud Continent, there might exist other continents. And those other continents should be on the other side of the deep sea. By sifting through the reincarnation Martial Emperor's memories, Duanling Tian could easily learn this. The reincarnation Martial Emperor once saw a written record in an ancient ruin. It was a record left by an ancient martial artist, stating that he had once encountered a strong expert from outside Cloud Continent. The other party defeated him with just one move. and the martial artist who left that text claimed to be a Martial Emperor stage 6th level existence. Even at his peak, the reincarnation Martial Emperor was only at the Martial Emperor stage 4th level. Furthermore, in the era of the reincarnation Martial Emperor, he was the only Martial Emperor expert above the Martial Emperor stage 4th level on Cloud Continent. Therefore, he was the undisputed first Martial Emperor of Cloud Continent at that time. Duan Ling Tian learned all of this from the reincarnation Martial Emperor's memories. One move to defeat a Martial Emperor stage 6th level expert. A Martial Emperor stage 6th level expert, even the reincarnation Martial Emperor at his peak, would be defeated by a single move if he faced one. An existence that can defeat a Martial Emperor stage 6th level expert in one move. How terrifying must that be? Thinking of this, Duan Ling Tian trembled with fear. Of course, I am not from your backwater continent. The black-clad middle-aged man snorted coldly when he heard Duan Ling Tian's question. He originally didn't want to answer Duan Ling Tian's question, but after seeing the talisman in Duan Ling Tian's hand, a deep apprehension appeared in his eyes, and then he answered somewhat reluctantly. Then where do you come from? Duan Ling Tian asked again. He took in the middle-aged man in black's wary gaze towards the talisman in his hand, which surprised him. The talisman in his hand was left to him by his cheap old man. He never expected that even the expert in front of him, who seemed to be from outside the Yunxiao continent, would be so wary of this talisman in his hand. Where do I come from? The middle-aged man in black took a deep breath and looked at Duan Ling Tian with anger. Are you toying with me? Since you have a Dao talisman drawn by a Saint Entry Realm Dao cultivator, how could you not know where I come from? This time, for the face of that Saint Entry Realm Dao cultivator behind you, I won't pursue the matter of you destroying my human demon puppet. Otherwise, even if you have the Dao talisman he left for you, I will definitely kill you, even if it means suffering severe injuries. The middle-aged man in black shouted coldly. His words indicated that the talisman in Duan Ling Tian's hand could severely injure him. As soon as the middle-aged man in black finished speaking, he vanished into thin air before Duan Ling Tian and Feng Tianwu's eyes, as if he had never appeared. Seeing the middle-aged man in black come and go without a trace, Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but smile bitterly. I still have many things to ask him. Why did he leave so quickly? Whether it was the Mortal Realm Martial Cultivator or the Saint Entry Realm Dao Cultivator mentioned by the middle-aged man in black, both were completely unfamiliar to Duan Ling Tian. Even if he searched the reincarnation Martial Emperor's memories from 2 lives, he couldn't find any related records. Mortal Realm Martial Cultivator, Saint Entry Realm Dao Cultivator. Even the reincarnation Martial Emperor, after 2 lives, has never heard of them. It was precisely because of this that Duan Ling Tian was surprised. Could it be that the Mortal Realm Martial Cultivator and Saint Entry Realm Dao Cultivator are cultivation realms in the depths of the sea, or even another continent overseas? Like our Yunxiao continents, Void Realm, Martial Emperor Realm, Martial God Realm? Soon, Duan Ling Tian, who had come back to his senses, couldn't help but secretly guess. The more he thought about it, the more certain he became. Furthermore, that middle-aged man in black also said that the talisman in my hand was a Dao talisman, and it was a Dao talisman drawn by a Saint Entry Realm Dao cultivator. Thinking of this, Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but fall into contemplation. The talisman in his hand, or rather, the Dao talisman, was left to him by his cheap old man, Duan Rufeng, before he left. How could father have a Dao talisman? Could it be that he? For a moment, a crazy thought rose in Duan Ling Tian's mind. His cheap old man, in the 20 years since he left, was very likely not on the Yunxiao continent. Otherwise, where did he get the Dao talisman? A Dao talisman was clearly not something from the Yunxiao continent. Could it be that father took mother and Jing Ru and the others and left the Yunxiao continent, taking them to another continent overseas? At this thought, Duan Ling Tian's mouth twitched fiercely. No wonder even the reincarnation Martial Emperor's memories from 2 lives had no records of this talisman. It turns out it wasn't something from the Yunxiao continent at all. At some point, Duan Ling Tian's gaze fell on the Dao talisman in his hand, and a faint bitter smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. In the past, he believed that, as long as one stood at the peak of the Yunxiao continent, it would be enough to look down upon the heavens and earth and all living beings. But now, it seemed that even if he truly stood at the peak of the Yunxiao continent, like the reincarnation Martial Emperor back then, in the depths of the sea, and even on another continent overseas, there were still many existences stronger than him. It seems that the older generation of martial god experts on the Yunxiao continent may indeed have gone to another continent overseas, just as the reincarnation Martial Emperor speculated. That place is where there are mortal realm martial cultivators, Saint Entry realm Dao cultivators, and even Dao talismans. Duan Lingtian thought to himself, if father really took mother and Jing Ru and the others and left the Yunxiao continent to go to another continent overseas, his current strength must also be far beyond what ordinary martial emperors can compare to. Taking a deep breath, Duan Lingtian muttered to himself with a solemn expression. Now, it's almost certain that intentionally lowered, hoarse voice from above the imperial city of Qishao Kingdom, when Peak Master Qin Xiang and I faced Zhao Ming and the other 3 protector elders of the 3 sects of Qinglin, was father's voice. Father is that mysterious expert hidden in the Qishao Kingdom. Although Duan Lingtian had speculated about this in the past, he couldn't be 100% sure. Now, he could be 100% sure. That mysterious expert was his cheap old man, an existence who could easily overpower the 3 Void Entry Realm 6th level martial artists high above the Imperial City, even while inside the Imperial City of Qishao Kingdom. Even he, with his current strength, couldn't achieve such a feat. Father's strength might even be stronger than the reincarnation Martial Emperor at his peak. I really don't know what he experienced in the 20 years since he left to possess such terrifying strength. Compared to father, the fortuitous encounters I've had along the way, such as the fusion of the reincarnation Martial Emperor's memories from 2 lives and various other encounters afterward, are all insignificant. Thinking of this, Duan Lingtian chuckled self-deprecatingly. However, if father is truly an expert from another continent overseas now, why did he take mother, Jing Ru, Bai Yao, and Xiao Lan, but not me? Duan Lingtian was utterly baffled by this. No matter what, he was still his cheap old man's biological son. Logically speaking, his cheap old man shouldn't have left him on the Yunxiao continent to fend for himself. Perhaps there was some other reason why father didn't take me with him. Now, Duan Lingtian could only think this way. After all, no parents would not want their children to stay by their side. At the same time, a thought flashed through Duan Lingtian's mind, as if he had remembered something. Raising his hand, he took out a jade box, which was precisely the exquisite jade box that his cheap old man, Duan Ruffeng, had left for him. Looking at the exquisite jade box in his hand, Duan Lingtian's mind once again echoed with the message from the sound-condensing jade slip that his father had left him. Besides those 3 talismans, I left you an exquisite jade box. When you are capable of opening it in the future, you will know where your mother and I are. These were the exact words of his cheap old man, Duan Ruffeng. Now, even without a quasi-emperor grade spirit sword, my power is comparable to over 2,000 power of the ancient horned dragon. I should be able to open this exquisite jade box, right? Duan Lingtian's heart stirred. He clasped the jade box with both hands, his vital energy surging, and 4 concepts followed closely. Moments later, above Duan Lingtian's head in the void realm, the power of heaven and earth fluctuated, finally converging into 2,200 ancient, horned dragon phantoms, winding down, lifelike. Originally, Feng Tianwu found it strange when Duan Lingtian occasionally muttered to himself, speaking words she couldn't understand. However, despite her curiosity, she was sensible enough not to disturb Duan Lingtian. Now, seeing the celestial phenomenon appearing above Duan Lingtian's head, her pretty face couldn't help but change slightly. She never expected that. Her big brother Duan actually possessed such immense power today. Back in the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, outside Qingfeng Hall, big brother Duan fought against Lei Zhong, the foremost young expert of the Chu Yun sect at the time. Wielding a spiritual artifact, His full power was only comparable to 1,600 power of the ancient horned dragon. And now, without a spiritual artifact, Big Brother Duan only used his vital energy and concepts to unleash power comparable to 2,200 power of the ancient horned dragon. Feng Tianwu secretly gasped, momentarily stunned by the strength Duan Lingtian was now displaying. Now, she finally understood why her big brother Duan had such confidence to protect her and Zhang Shouyong all the way from the northern desert region back to the Great Han Dynasty. It turned out that Big Brother Duan already possessed such powerful strength. It seems that Big Brother Duan's fortuitous encounter within Qingfeng Hall was extraordinary. Feng Tianwu thought to herself. After leaving the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, she had not left Duan Lingtian's side. Therefore, in her opinion, the reason for her big brother Duan's significant increase in strength must have been some enviable fortuitous encounter he had in the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. Still can't open it. Soon, Feng Tianwu heard Duan Lingtian sigh, and only then realized that Duan Lingtian had just used 2,200 power of the ancient horned dragon merely to open the exquisite jade box in his hand. However, according to her big brother Duan, even with 2,200 power of the ancient horned dragon, he still couldn't open that jade box? What kind of jade box is that? 2,200 power of the ancient horned dragon couldn't even open it. For a moment, Feng Tianwu's pretty face changed slightly. Before she could react, she saw Duan Lingtian raise his hand, and a sword appeared in it, a sword exuding a terrifying aura. It was Duan Lingtian's Quasi-Emperor Grade Spirit Sword. With the appearance of the Quasi-Emperor Grade Spirit Sword, an additional 800 ancient horned dragon phantoms appeared in the void realm above. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian flicked his hand, and a sword strike containing 3,000 power of the ancient horned dragon, like lightning, pierced towards the closed seam of the exquisite jade box, intending to pry it open by force. Clang! However, with a soft clang, the exquisite jade box remained motionless. The closed seam didn't even show the slightest mark from the stab. What is this exquisite jade box made of? It's so hard. Finally, Duan Lingtian could only give up. As he put away the Quasi-Emperor Grade Spirit Sword, he sighed again, realizing that with his current strength, he still couldn't open this exquisite jade box. Father is becoming more and more mysterious. Coming back to his senses, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but smile bitterly, and at the same time, put away the exquisite jade box. Big brother Duan, what kind of jade box is that? Your sword strike, containing 3,000 power of the ancient horned dragon, not only failed to open it, but it didn't even leave the slightest mark on it. Feng Tianwu, who had witnessed everything from beginning to end, was momentarily greatly astonished. I don't know either. Duan Lingtian shook his head with a bitter smile. Although the exquisite jade box was left to him by his cheap old man, he knew nothing about its background, nor did he know exactly what was inside. Of course, one thing was certain. His cheap old man must have left a sound-condensing jade slip inside, and the message within should inform him about the other continent beyond the sea. Of course, besides a sound-condensing jade slip, there must be other things inside the exquisite jade box. Duan Lingtian had an extremely strong intuition about this. Perhaps I'll only be able to open it after my cultivation breaks through to the Martial Emperor stage. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Tianwu, let's go. Immediately after, Duan Lingtian called out to Feng Tianwu, and they continued their journey to Xiongquan's hometown, preparing to find Xiongquan and help him repair his dantian. Okay, Feng Tianwu nodded obediently, silently following by Duan Lingtian's side like a shadow. Based on his memories of sending Xiongquan back that year, Duan Lingtian quickly found Xiongquan's hometown, a remote small village nestled in the mountains. Although the small village was remote, it was filled with a strong sense of life. When Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu arrived, they could vaguely see scenes of men farming and women weaving in the village, and children happily playing, carefree. If only I could spend my entire life in a place like this with the person I love, it would be a life well lived. Feng Tianwu looked down at the village scene, her autumn eyes, which seemed to melt everything, filled with tenderness, and her red lips parted slightly as she murmured almost involuntarily. It's normal for you to think that way, but if it were them, they would probably hope to have powerful martial strength, to venture out and explore the world. Duan Ling Tian said with a faint smile. Different positions naturally lead to different thoughts. For someone like Feng Tianwu, who grew up with a silver spoon in her mouth and was a true heaven's favored daughter, it was not surprising for her to be moved by such a tranquil and peaceful scene. However, if it were the villagers, they would rather wish to be like Feng Tianwu, possessing formidable martial strength, so they could go out and see the world. Because their strength was too weak and they lacked the ability to protect themselves, they didn't even dare to easily leave the village. Hearing Duan Ling Tian's words, Feng Tianwu realized that her earlier murmurings had been heard by him, and her pretty face flushed crimson, as if it could drip blood. Feng Tianwu's slightly shy and delicate appearance made Duan Ling Tian, who happened to be looking at her, momentarily dazed, and he couldn't help but feel an impulse to lean in and fiercely kiss the beautiful woman's face. Let's go down. Duan Ling Tian took a deep breath, suppressing his somewhat restless emotions, and after greeting Feng Tianwu, he was the first to descend. Feng Tianwu had initially felt a little secretly pleased when she saw Duan Ling Tian's fervent gaze, but now, seeing him descend towards the village as if fleeing, she couldn't help but sigh again. He really is a blockhead. She cast an annoyed glance at the tall purple figure, then Feng Tianwu moved, like a fire spirit, following him like a shadow. Whoosh! Duan Ling Tian moved like the wind, descending like a hawk, and in a blink of an eye, he was in the low sky above the village, appearing before the villagers. Wow, he can fly. The first to spot Duan Ling Tian was a 4 or 5-year-old boy, who excitedly shouted as he looked at Duan Ling Tian standing in midair. It was as if he had discovered a new continent. I heard my dad say that only experts above the insightful emptiness stage can fly in the air and stand in midair. It seems he is an expert above the insightful emptiness stage, said a girl who looked 13 or 14. An expert above the insightful emptiness stage? Isn't that as powerful as Uncle Xiongquan? Another 7 or 8-year-old boy exclaimed. Unlike the innocent children, the adult villagers who had discovered Duan Ling Tian now changed their expressions, their eyes filled with fear. Their gazes towards Duan Ling Tian were as if they had seen some monstrous flood or beast. Their thought was simple. Such a powerful person, logically, shouldn't descend upon their village, but now that he had, it was highly likely that it meant no good. Soon, a villager's eyes flashed, and he hurriedly turned and left, as if to spread the news. A moment later, the remaining adult villagers saw a flash before their eyes, and another red-clothed woman appeared out of thin air beside the purple-clothed youth who was standing in midair. The red-clothed woman had a graceful figure and a beauty that could topple nations, instantly leaving them stunned, like wooden statues. So beautiful. Is this a fairy sister? A fairy sister has descended. Not only were the adult villagers attracted by the red-clothed woman, even the children who were playing in the village stopped their activities, their eyes fixed on the red-clothed woman in the sky. The adult villagers were much the same, their gazes completely drawn to the beautiful woman before them. They had spent their entire lives in this remote little village, self-sufficient, and had never been to the outside world. When had they ever seen such a beautiful woman? Tianwu, these children are calling you fairy sisters. Duan Ling Tian looked at the innocent children before him and said to Feng Tianwu with a slight smile. Hearing this, the flush on Feng Tianwu's pretty face deepened a bit. Who are you? Just then, a sharp shout came from behind the village. Accompanying the sharp shout was an agile figure like a cheetah, which swiftly entered the village and glared menacingly at Duan Ling Tian and Feng Tianwu. Appearing before Duan Ling Tian was a burly young man of about 20 years old. The young man had thick eyebrows, and the eyes beneath them, though filled with deep apprehension when looking at them, still held a straight posture, not retreating a single step. Immediately, Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but show a hint of admiration in his eyes. Oh, this young man seems a bit familiar. Soon, After carefully observing the burly young man for a while, Duan Ling Tian suddenly found him somewhat familiar, as if he had seen him somewhere before. This is Xiong Quan's hometown. I only came here when I sent Xiong Quan back that year. This young man is about 20 years old now, so he should have been only 12 or 13 back then. Thinking of this, Duan Ling Tian's eyes lit up, and he looked at the burly young man, asking with some surprise, could you be heir who? As soon as Duan Ling Tian's words fell, not only the burly young man was stunned, even the adult villagers in the village were stunned. This big brother who came with fairy sister seems to know brother heir who. Brother heir who is so amazing, even this flying big brother knows him. Brother heir who, he truly is the only strong person in our village who is left with Uncle Xiong Quan to explore the outside world. The children in the village showed exaggerated expressions on their faces. You know me? The burly young man, heir who, looked at Duan Ling Tian in a daze, his face full of confusion. What? Heir who? Have you forgotten me? Duan Ling Tian smiled. I remember, when I came to the village with Xiong Quan, you were only 12 or 13. At that time, you even invited me to your house for a meal. As soon as Duan Ling Tian said this, heir whose pupils couldn't help but shrink. When he was 12 or 13, he invited the person in front of him to his house for a meal. Are you young Master Ling Tian? Finally, heir who searched through his distant childhood memories and finally remembered Duan Ling Tian, his face filled with excitement and emotion. Over the years, he had heard his uncle Xiong Quan mention various deeds of this purple-clothed youth many times. When the purple-clothed youth was his current age, he was already in existence at the 8th level of the origin course stage. He had always regarded him as his idol. Now, seeing his idol again, how could he not be excited? He is young Master Ling Tian? At this moment, many villagers, hearing heir whose words, couldn't help but recall the noble guest who had come to their village back then. That guest, even Xiong Quan, the strongest in their village, had to respectfully address him as young master. It really is young Master Ling Tian. So many years have passed, and young Master Ling Tian hasn't changed at all. Yes, young Master Ling Tian is still so young. One by one, the villagers looked at Duan Ling Tian, their apprehension completely gone, replaced by respect. Heir who, where's Xiong Quan? Duan Ling Tian looked at the burly young man before him, feeling a bit emotional himself. In the blink of an eye, the child from back then had grown into an adult and possessed a cultivation at the 4th level of the origin course stage. Although he was not as strong as Duan Ling Tian was at that age, in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, he could still be considered exceptionally talented. Uncle Xiong Quan, heir who was about to speak, but he was interrupted by a loud voice. Who are you? How dare you trespass into our Xiong family village? The loud voice, like a clap of thunder, came from far to near. As the voice fell, a figure like a giant sword shot into the village from outside, appearing beside heir who. At the same time, the incoming person, whose body shimmered with a solid sword chi, had 200 ancient horned dragon phantoms hovering above his head, winding down, their aura like a rainbow. 1st level high-grade sword intent. Even before the person, like a giant sword, shot into the village, Duan Ling Tian had already seen the 200 ancient horned dragon phantoms that followed, and his pupils couldn't help but shrink. Now, after the person appeared, he couldn't help but exclaim in shock, Xiong Quan, when did you comprehend the 1st level high-grade sword intent? The person who arrived was a tall, burly middle-aged man with a full beard and an unkempt appearance. It was none other than Xiong Quan, who had always followed him back then. Young Master, Xiong Quan, who had rushed back in time due to the villagers' tip-off, upon seeing the purple-clothed youth's face and hearing his voice, his burly figure trembled violently with excitement. As the sword chi wrapped around Xiong Quan's body disappeared, and the 200 ancient horned dragon phantoms above his head vanished, his large, copper gong-like eyes were filled with tears of inexplicable excitement. After many years, seeing Duan Ling Tian again, Xiong Quan completely lost his composure. Xiong Quan, long time no see. Duan Ling Tian flew down and landed in front of Xiong Quan, looking him up and down. He smiled slightly and said, "You're still the same as before, no change." Although Duan Ling Tian tried to remain calm, a hint of excitement still involuntarily showed in his eyes. At this moment, he seemed to have completely forgotten about Xiong Quan comprehending the first-level high-grade sword concept. "Young master," seeing Duan Ling Tian so close, Xiong Quan's body trembled even more violently from excitement, and the hot tears in his large, copper gong-like eyes could no longer be held back, flowing down his face. As the saying goes, a man does not easily shed tears, only when he is deeply saddened, or when he is overjoyed. But Xiong Quan now was not sad. He was happy, shedding tears of excitement and joy. "Xiong Quan, I've kept you waiting." Duan Ling Tian took a deep breath, then continued, "I told you back then that when I came to find you again, it would be the time for me to repair your dantian." This was a promise Duan Ling Tian had made to Xiong Quan back then. Now, he had come precisely to fulfill that promise. Hearing Duan Ling Tian's words, Xiong Quan froze, completely frozen. "Repair his dantian? Young master, are you telling the truth?" Xiong Quan's mood, which had just calmed down slightly, became agitated again, and his stubble-covered cheeks trembled violently with excitement. Although he had never shown his sadness about his crippled dantian and inability to cultivate in front of outsiders over the years, whenever night fell and silence reigned, he would stare blankly. Staring blankly because of his crippled dantian. As for Duan Ling Tian's promise to him back then, he hadn't taken it to heart, thinking Duan Ling Tian was just comforting him. Simply because he had never heard of anyone whose dantian could be repaired after being crippled. But today, Duan Ling Tian, whom he hadn't seen for many years, reappeared before him and even said he could repair his dantian. At this moment, he had no choice but to believe the promise Duan Ling Tian had made to him back then. "What? You still don't believe me?" Duan Ling Tian chuckled. No, young master, I just think it's too incredible." Xiong Quan hastily shook his head and said, "Big brother Ling Tian, can you really help Uncle Xiong Quan repair his dantian?" "Who, besides Xiong Quan?" asked Duan Ling Tian with an excited expression. For a moment, the other villagers also looked at Duan Ling Tian with anticipation, as if all of them wanted to get a definite answer from Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian didn't speak. He knew that at this time, no matter how eloquently he spoke, it would be useless. It was better to let facts prove everything. Whoosh. Duan Ling Tian raised his hand and took out the immortal spirit grass from his spatial ring. The last green glowing leaf of the immortal spirit grass appeared before everyone's eyes. "Xiong Quan, take it." After Duan Ling Tian plucked the last remaining leaf of the immortal spirit grass, the green light around the stem of the immortal spirit grass completely faded, vanishing without a trace. But the green light on the immortal spirit grass leaf continued to flicker. A glowing grass. What kind of grass is this? So magical. Immediately, the group of Xiong family village villagers watching were greatly astonished, and even the children who had quieted down were stunned. When Xiong Quan saw the green glowing immortal spirit grass, he realized that this glowing green grass was not simple. Now, hearing Duan Ling Tian tell him to consume the immortal spirit grass, his heart couldn't help but tremble. This was the medicinal herb that could help him repair his dantian? If it were an ordinary medicinal herb, even if Duan Ling Tian asked him to take it, he might not say anything on the surface, but he would more or less have some doubts in his heart. But the green glowing medicinal herb in front of him made him realize that it was no ordinary item. "Are you kidding me? Can ordinary medicinal herbs glow?" "Thank you, young master." Xiong Quan excitedly took the immortal spirit grass from Duan Ling Tian's hand and, without any hesitation, put it into his mouth, swallowing it in a few bites. Seeing Xiong Quan swallow the medicinal herb, not only the group of villagers from Xiong family village, but even Feng Tianwu, who had now descended and stood beside Duan Ling Tian, looked at Xiong Quan with curiosity. Although she had learned about the medicinal properties of the immortal spirit grass from Duan Ling Tian, she had not witnessed its power with her own eyes. Now, She finally had the chance to witness the immortal spirit grass demonstrate its medicinal power. She was very much looking forward to it. After Xiong Quan consumed the immortal spirit grass, the group of Xiong family village villagers held their breath, their gazes fixed on Xiong Quan. Uncle Xiong Quan. Erhu clenched his fists, his body trembling slightly, and his gaze toward Xiong Quan was filled with anticipation. In the past, among the people of Xiong family village, he and Xiong Quan were the closest. All his skills were taught to him by Xiong Quan. Because of this, he knew best how much his uncle Xiong Quan cared about his crippled Dantian, and because of this, he especially hoped that his uncle Xiong Quan's Dantian could be repaired. Wow! Uncle Xiong Quan's belly is glowing. A little boy exclaimed. At the same time, everyone also saw that at Xiong Quan's Dantian, threads of dazzling green light were rising, showing through his clothes. The green light grew stronger and stronger. Half an hour later, the green light gradually diminished until it vanished completely. Uncle Xiong Quan. Erhu took a deep breath, looking at Xiong Quan with trepidation. Feng Tianwu, as well as the group of villagers from Xiong family village, were now all staring at Xiong Quan, their eyes full of urgency, eagerly wanting to know the result. As for Duan Ling Tian, he maintained a calm and composed expression throughout, as if a mountain collapsing before him would not change his demeanor. It was as if he wasn't worried at all that Xiong Quan's Dantian wouldn't be repaired. Ha ha! Under everyone's watchful eyes, Xiong Quan was stunned for a moment. The moment he came back to his senses, a smile appeared on his stubble-covered face, and then he threw his head back and laughed heartily. His laughter was unrestrained, as if he wanted to completely release all the pent-up frustrations of these past years. It's repaired. My Dantian is repaired. After more than 10 breaths, Xiong Quan's laughter finally subsided, but he still seemed not satisfied enough, roaring up at the sky to vent his excited emotions. Tears streamed uncontrollably from Xiong Quan's eyes. For a moment, the villagers of Xiong family village, including Erhu, all smiled. They were all happy for Xiong Quan. Ling, big brother Ling Tian, thank you. Erhu thanked Duan Ling Tian with a trembling voice. He was so excited that his voice trembled. Don't thank me. To be honest, I bear a significant responsibility for Xiong Quan's Dantian being crippled back then. Duan Ling Tian shook his head. Unlike the excitement of the Xiong family village villagers, as soon as the green light rising from Xiong Quan's Dantian disappeared, his extended spiritual energy had detected that Xiong Quan's Dantian had been repaired. Because of this, he was very calm. Moreover, he had already witnessed the heaven-defying medicinal power of the immortal spirit grass before. Hu Li, after taking the immortal spirit grass, had his severed leg regrown. That was much more difficult than repairing a Dantian. Repairing a Dantian, whether it was a royal grade resurrection pill or a quasi-royal grade resurrection pill, could achieve it. Regrowing a severed leg, neither a quasi-royal grade resurrection pill nor a royal grade resurrection pill could do it. Compared to regrowing a severed leg, Dantian repair was child's play. It's really repaired? Although Feng Tianwu had never doubted Duan Ling Tian's words, seeing the faint elemental energy permeating Xiong Quan's body now, she was still surprised. The elemental energy around Xiong Quan's body was very weak, so weak that it could almost be ignored. But even such weak elemental energy still required a complete Dantian to extend out of the body. Thank you, young master. Before anyone, including Duan Ling Tian, could react, Xiong Quan knelt down in front of Duan Ling Tian with a thud and kowtowed in gratitude. Xiong Quan, what are you doing? Seeing this scene, Duan Ling Tian's expression changed drastically. He hastily raised his hand, and gentle elemental energy transformed into an invisible force, extending out and lifting Xiong Quan entirely. Xiong Quan saw the anger on Duan Ling Tian's face and realized that Duan Ling Tian was angry because of his actions just now, and for a moment, he was at a loss. Suddenly, a thought flashed in his mind. Young master, come with me. Xiong Quan called out to Duan Ling Tian, then took the lead and flew out, heading towards the outside of the village. As soon as Xiong Quan's voice reached Duan Ling Tian's ears, Duan Ling Tian saw Xiong Quan turn and head out of the village. His anger instantly dissipated, and he felt a bit helpless, but he still followed. He wanted to see where Xiong Quan was going to take him. Feng Tian Wu naturally followed closely behind. Whoosh. After Xiong Quan left the village, the sword qi on his body surged, making him seem to transform into a giant sword, soaring into the distance. Because Xiong Quan's current elemental energy could not allow him to fly in the air, the giant sword he transformed into skimmed across the ground. However, Duan Ling Tian's eyes were still filled with a hint of shock. Xiong Quan, how did you comprehend the first-level high-grade sword concept? Looking at the 200 ancient horned dragon phantoms that followed Xiong Quan as he flew out, Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but ask curiously. Even Feng Tian Wu's pretty face was full of curiosity. She had heard Duan Ling Tian mention some things about Xiong Quan. Therefore, she knew that when Xiong Quan returned to Xiong family village back then, he had only comprehended sword momentum, not even the low-grade sword concept. And now, in less than 10 years, Xiong Quan had actually comprehended sword momentum to the first-level high-grade sword concept, which she found incredibly astonishing. Young master, you'll understand everything once you come with me to that place. Xiong Quan, leading the way, said to Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian nodded, said nothing more, and followed Xiong Quan closely. He wanted to see where Xiong Quan was going to take him. That place, which allowed Xiong Quan to comprehend the void transformation concept in just a few short years, was nothing short of a miracle in his eyes. Xiong Quan forged ahead to lead the way. Duan Ling Tian and Feng Tianwu followed like shadows. Among the Tsong Mountains, the terrain was treacherous. An ordinary man would struggle with every step, and the beasts that pounced from the sides would be enough to turn the place into a nightmare. The three of them, of course, were no ordinary men. Duan Ling Tian and Feng Tianwu flew through the air without the slightest strain. Although Xiong Quan traveled on the ground, he moved as if on level ground, strolling at leisure. The sword gang that radiated from him was so sharp that beasts fled in panic, let alone dared to attack. At last, Duan Ling Tian and Feng Tianwu followed Xiong Quan to the mouth of a gorge deep in the mountains. The entrance was a thread of sky, masked by dense jungle. Without Xiong Quan to guide them, Duan Ling Tian and Feng Tianwu would never have found the hidden gorge. Young master, Miss Tianwu, it's just inside. Standing before the gorge entrance, Xiong Quan's breathing quickened, as though something inside stirred him inexplicably. On the way here, Duan Ling Tian had already introduced Feng Tianwu to Xiong Quan. Xiong Quan was a shrewd man. He could easily see Feng Tianwu's affection for his young master. After observing his young master's attitude, he realized this Miss Tianwu would likely become the third young madam. Therefore, he treated Feng Tianwu with utmost respect and dared not neglect her. Duan Ling Tian nodded. He too had noticed Xiong Quan's excitement. It made him even more curious. What could be inside the gorge to make Xiong Quan lose his usual composure? In his memory, Xiong Quan was a steady man. Let's go. The moment Duan Ling Tian spoke, he shot through the thread of sky and into the gorge. Behind him, Feng Tianwu and Xiong Quan followed closely. Splash, 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 splash. The instant they entered the gorge, Duan Ling Tian heard the roar of rushing water, drawing his gaze into the distance. At a single glance, he saw a great waterfall deep in the gorge, cascading like a galaxy fallen from the heavens, a sight that shook the senses. Young master, this is the place. By now, Xiong Quan's agitation had calmed somewhat. Once again, he took the lead, arriving opposite the waterfall and staring fixedly at the cliff wall beside it. It was as though something on that wall held him spellbound. At the same time, his sword gang surged, brimming with sharpness, exuding a peerlessly keen aura. The change in Xiong Quan immediately caught the attention of Duan Ling Tian and Feng Tianwu. By then, the two had reached his side. Curiosity led them to follow his gaze toward the cliff beside the distant waterfall. One look and their eyes were riveted. Sword. On the cliff face, a huge character's sword stood out clearly. At first glance, it seemed ordinary, but the longer Duan Ling Tian stared, the clearer his mind became. The character's sword had clearly been carved there with swordlight. Every stroke was executed in a single breath, radiating wave after wave of sword intent. Within his empty mind, only the character's sword remained. Each sharp, forceful stroke seemed to entrance him. Whoosh! At some point, Sword Gang rose around Duan Lingtian, his own comprehension, the 9th-level mid-tier sword intent realm. Almost the moment the sword intent appeared, the power of heaven and earth above his head churned and finally gathered into 100 ancient, horned dragon phantoms. The gorge fell utterly silent. Not only were Duan Lingtian and Xiongquan staring at the character's sword, even Feng Tianwu's gaze was locked upon it. Initially, she had merely thought the character beautiful. But after several earnest glances, she found the character's sword possessed a bewitching power she could not resist, immersing her completely. Without noticing, she grasped a certain force and smoothly comprehended it. This force was unmistakable, sharp and keen. Sword force. Feng Tianwu's heart trembled, her lovely face paling slightly. She never imagined that a single character's sword carved on a cliff could enable her to comprehend sword force, something she had never touched before. Though deeply shocked, her eyes still refused to leave the character's sword. It seemed to hold endless magic she was unwilling to break away from. Splash! Beside her, Duan Lingtian's Sword Gang sword, sending out ever fiercer, sky-piercing sharpness. At the same time, the heaven-earth phenomenon above his head changed. In the blink of an eye, the 100 phantoms became 200 ancient, horned dragon phantoms. First-level high-tier, sword intent realm. Perhaps, right now, even Duan Lingtian, completely immersed in the word sword carved into the cliff face, was unaware that his sword intent had already broken through. In one leap, it had advanced into the void transformation intent level. The sword, monarch among weapons. The sword can save, yet it can also kill. The sword upholds justice in the world and cuts down every injustice. At some unknown point, while Duan Lingtian's mind was wholly absorbed in that cliffside character, a calm voice reached his ears, devoid of any emotion. Word by word, the voice entered his ears, giving him an entirely new understanding of the sword. The speaker's insight into the sword left him ashamed of his own attainments. For a moment, he felt that his own mastery of the sword was no more than a firefly's glow beside the sun and moon when compared to this person. At the same time, Duan Lingtian realized he had fallen into a wondrous state. Within this state, his mind was perfectly clear. The character's sword that had filled his mind now began to transform in endless ways. Finally, after countless changes, the character condensed into a black silhouette, appearing out of thin air with sword in hand. Duan Lingtian could not see the figure's face, yet he could clearly sense the sharp sword intent radiating from it, an intent that seemed able to tear everything apart. That sword intent pressed down on him until he could barely breathe, almost suffocating. Facing the sword intent, this shadow unconsciously releases. Even Emperor Realm sword profundity would probably pale in comparison. For no reason at all, this thought suddenly sprang into Duan Lingtian's mind. Once it appeared, he could no longer suppress it. Soon, as the inexplicable silhouette began to move, Duan Lingtian's heart shook violently. Heavens! How could this be? He discovered that the figure's movements were fluid and natural, executing a set of sword techniques. Had it been any other sword art, he might have accepted it. But what it displayed was precisely the 9 Dragons' Inchlight Flash. The 9 Dragons' Inchlight Flash, a heaven-grade high-tier sword art contained within the 9 Dragons' War Venerable art. Logically, apart from himself and the reincarnation Martial Emperor whose divine soul had been obliterated, there should be no third person under heaven capable of performing this sword art. Before Duan Lingtian could think further, his mind wavered again. He saw that when the mysterious shadow performed the 9 Dragons' Inchlight Flash, all 9 dragons emerged, their momentum overwhelming. 9 divine dragons, 18 eyes flashing, shot out 18 rays of extreme inchlight. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The 18 rays of inchlight tore through everything as though they could pierce the world itself. The 9 dragons inch-light flash at perfection realm. Duan Lingtian was dumbstruck. Then he watched the shadow perform the 9 dragons inch-light flash again and again, as though it never tired. At this moment, it seemed to have become a tireless teacher. From initial shock, Duan Lingtian calmed down, now watching the shadow intently and learning a great deal. Time quietly slipped by. He had no idea how long had passed. The moment he realized he had gained an entirely new, ultimate insight into the 9 dragons inch-light flash, the shadow stopped. Just as he was about to rouse himself and test his newfound understanding, the shadow moved again. Whoosh. Once more it displayed a sword art. This technique startled Duan Lingtian anew. 9 tribulations, sword control art. The shadow hovered in the air. 9 swords appeared around it, circling endlessly. Suddenly, swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. With a thought, the 9 swords shot out together, their killing intent overwhelming. What astounded him even more followed. Duan Lingtian watched in alarm as from each of the 9 swords 9 divine dragons emerged, 81 dragons in total, whose eyes flashed in unison. In the next instant, 162 rays of extreme inch-light burst forth, blanketing an entire area with unstoppable force. It can be used like that? While he was still dazed, the shadow vanished and he came to his senses, realizing he was still standing opposite the great waterfall in the gorge. Tianwu. Once awake, Duan Lingtian saw Feng Tianwu likewise staring fixedly at the character's sword on the cliff, and he could not help drawing a sharp breath. Who on earth left that character behind? As the question formed, he sensed something and abruptly looked up toward the sky above him. There, as he prepared to withdraw the sword intent that had risen unnoticed within him, the heavenly phenomena were already fading. This, gazing at the ancient horned dragon phantoms filling the sky, Duan Lingtian's eyes widened, utterly stupefied.